up Badlands. Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
Good evening. Today is Black Monday, the day the Dow dropped more than 500 points. Today the Dow dropped more than 22%.
Everybody's panic. Everyone's everybody was trying to find a bottom.
1929. But this crash in 1987 is not just an American experience. Around the world, stock markets fell faster than a skydiver without a parachute.
What we have to confront is a deep, systemic, and structural restructuring of our world. And this will take some time. And the world will look differently after we have gone through this transition process.
For centuries, they've been stuffing their stomachs with human flesh, and they've been stuffing their pockets with money. But they must realize that this bowl of vampires is about to end. But the common people of these countries in their heart, they can feel what's happening. They can see our struggle for our independence, for our true sovereignty. And they see this connection with their aspirations to be truly independent, which is exacerbated by the fact that in the Western elites there is a strong desire to freeze the current unfair state of things in international affairs.
Well, let me tell you something, brother. When they took a shot at my hero, and they tried to kill the next President of the United States, enough was enough. And I said, let Trumpomania run wild, brother. Let Trumpomania rule again. Let Trumpomania make America great again.
People who don't believe are walking dead. They are asleep, and this is the awakening.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Book of Trump. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Have some file management going on behind the scenes. I don't know what's going on here, but this is June 2nd, 2025, Chapter 18 of the Book of Trump. I'm your host, Gordon McCormick, aka the Ghost of Base Patrick Henry. And tonight's episode is the story of Bitcoin, digital 76 soft war, as our friend G Money has taught us about. And that is exactly who's joining us this evening. So everyone, please welcome G. What's up, G?
Yo, what's up, playa? And by the way, before everybody gets pissed off in the chat, I know Nas is faking gay, but I like the shirt anyway.
I didn't even notice that. I love it. I love it. Well, this is actually great timing, and I didn't plan this out. It just kind of serendipitously happened because we booked this a while back. Although when we booked it, I didn't know this was happening. You just spoke last week at the Bitcoin 2025 conference, which many people will remember last year. It was in Vegas this year, but last year it was in Nashville. Donald Trump went to that. He spoke, and that was like a major turning point in kind of Bitcoin and MAGA, like almost having this merging of the minds. Tell us a little bit about all that.
I mean, yeah, look, Donald Trump was there at the home of Andrew Jackson, right? Nashville is the home of Andrew Jackson, who was, the person that Trump put into the Oval Office in his first term 3 days in, right? He put a portrait of Andrew Jackson, the general, known famously for destroying the second central bank of the United States. And I don't think that's a coincidence. And it wasn't like Trump was, pulling punches with crypto. He was like full-blown Bitcoin maxi. Now, there's a lot of noise around what Trump is doing, because the biggest problem the world faces is financial illiteracy. Okay. And, I don't want to be mean to people, but if you can't connect the dots to Bitcoin at this point, like you're basically kind of retarded. And that's trying to be as nice as I can, but like the signal coming out of Trump is so strong. It's undeniable at this point. Now, I've been talking about this stuff for years, obviously.
Yeah,
and so that's kind of cool about it. It's like, it's unraveled while I've kind of talked about it this entire time. And so, what that means is like, maybe there is something more to this, and maybe people should start paying attention, because Trump didn't just go from like, crypto bro to like Bitcoin. He went to like full-blown soft war maxi, every Bitcoin mined in the USA. This is about freedom, sovereignty, and coercion from the state. This is all about 1776. This is all about taxation without representation, i.e. inflation. And, in my opinion, this has been what the entire Q operation has been all about. It's been to defeat the central bankers. And, if you can't, like I said, if you've been in this movement a long time and you can't realize that this entire like great awakening is about money and about replacing the failed, old, corrupt power brokers of money, then like I don't think I can help you. Like, some people you're just not going to get it. And so like enjoy the rug pulls until you pull your head out of your ass.
Yeah. That's all well said. And, in addition to Trump going to Nashville last year and giving that, I think that was kind of a historic speech, certainly as it relates to Bitcoin, because that was very jarring for, I think, a lot of people, the stuff that he said in that speech. We also have, a more personal anecdote. General Quast is coming to our guards. For those who haven't attended the guards or watched them virtually, I think it was the first one. Was it Dallas? Was that the first one where we did the Bitcoin panel and he got up and said a lot of things about Bitcoin, a lot of signal about Bitcoin. He came on Rug Pull Radio. You recently had General Flynn on there. That was a pretty incredible interview with General Flynn very recently. So, you have a lot of notable people in the movement besides President Trump who have obviously given a lot of credence to the theories and ideas that you've put out there.
Yeah, like, when you start putting all the pieces together and realize that every piece of Bitcoin is actually US based nuclear proof technology, from TCP/IP to the internet itself, right? The Tor browser to SHA-256 through GPS, all these different technologies are actually weapon systems when you kind of break it down. And at the end of the day, Bitcoin is actually a weapon system. It's a projection. It's a power projection system that humans can encapsulate, but they just got to know how to wield it, right? Like, you got to learn how to operate the weapon, but the weapon is us, right? We're the weapon in the hands of us, to where, our compliance is what activates, right? If we no longer comply, we're at 1776. We're at taxation without representation. Enough is enough. And it's up to us to turn the tables, right? Trump has tried to do whatever he can. He's exposed all the corruption with Elon and everything, and the endless wars, and he's making all these peace deals. But, here we are. Like, what are we going to do? Like, the swamp is fighting back. They're attempting to blockade, all the cuts and all the stuff Doge was doing. And, in reality, we just forgot how to play the game. If we could actually fund what we believe in and defund what we don't believe in, then it comes back to self-government. It comes back to government of the people, by the people. It comes back to self-association. It comes back to anti-federalism. It comes back to all these different things that this, country was built upon. On the people.
That's that's all very familiar probably to people who've heard G talk about this. Before we get too deep into the weeds on Bitcoin, let's back up a little, because I want to one of the things I appreciate about you and your personality and how you approach everything is, you kind of are a little bit more of, in terms of persona, I feel like you kind of manifest the 4chan like ethos as well as anybody. Where I mean, it rubs a lot of people the wrong way. But last week we did Q. We had Jordan on here. We did Q. We went and looked at some of the boards. We looked at some of the stuff on there. But really, we talked a lot about the hive mind and how all of these disaffected blackpilled. A lot of people were blackpilled at the time. And Q actually went and found the board and many times said, we came here for a reason. Of all the places we could have gone, we came here for a reason, and kind of gave all these people purpose. And they all then were activated on their own, and kind of it all just clicked with them, and they started sharing their research and digging in on people and building this information web of these criminal networks and organizations and events and timelines and everything. And I guess I'd like to kick it. I'd like to go there first. I kind of want to get your your take on Q. How familiar are you with it? And I know you had the COVFEFE dig. Let's tell me about Q and your take on it, and then let's go to COVFEFE dig, and then we'll go back to the origin story of Bitcoin.
Yeah, and so I think we talked about this on the Vegas episode, but again, I came across Q because I was in the Las Vegas shooting. I was looking for answers, and I was, Alex Jones and all these different but the only thing that really started to resonate with me was kind of the Q board. I forgot how I kind of came across the Q boards, but I came across the Q boards probably like within a couple weeks after the first drops. Okay, and again, I think the baseline everybody needs to set is that if the Q plan is actually real, right? Like, what are the fundamental things that it said it was going to do? It said it was going to end corruption. It said it was going to arrest all these people. It said it was going to be a brand new world for humans to actually, kind of operate in. And, a lot of that stuff sounded way too good to be true for me. It's like, I've had a lot of, rug pulls in my life or this and that, to where, you can't read everything on the internet as truth, And, even when I started reading the boards, even back 2016, 2017, in the back of my head, I was like, there is this Bitcoin thing. I haven't really done enough research on it. And there is this Q thing, which I still wasn't sold at the time on the Q stuff, because it was still new. It was still, within a couple of months. But they both kind of raised some red flags with me on, well, maybe these two things are connected. And then you kind of realize, like in the Q drops, it talks about, the corruption of money. It talks about the control of the central banks. It talks about money, power, and influence being the entire, reason that this operation started, is because we have been living in endless lies, endless wars, endless, oppression, right? Like that Q drop actually spells out. And, I thought, what, this is probably something that is gonna change the world if it's real, and in going through the drops, and like I've kind of said before, unless you were there, like decoding some of those drops or watching things happen in real time right after the fact, it's not going to have the same effect on you guys. So you can go back and read those drops, but it's really not going to have the same effect, because we were living through the drops and living through the daily news. And I was part of the group with Jordan Sather and IET and Pepe Deluxe and even what's his name? The Storm is Upon Us, right? The Joe guy, he was in there too. And we would decode stuff on the fly, and then it changed something in your brain. It made new neural pathways with connections of wow, there's something to this. And that's why I think a lot of the Q people are so retarded about it, is because it literally changed their brain in some emotional way, right? Probably this in a similar way of you loving someone or something like that, to where you were so bought into this thing because you really emotionally attached to it. You saw the stuff happen in real time. And, at the end of the day, Q always said to really think for yourself, and I think what happened was a lot of people would kind of decode stuff, or they'd go through stuff, but they didn't want to go too far away from the Q boards. They didn't want to drift off. I mean, some of them drifted way the hell off. But it'd be like, oh, well, Q never said that. Q didn't say that. And you're like, well, like, Q's not going to tell you everything. Like, he's not going to tell you, or who, they are. They're not going to spoon feed you everything that's going to happen. What they're going to give you is they're going to give you enough mathematical anomalies, meaning like there's no way this person could have known ahead of time of certain operations unless they were clued in, to then that event actually happening. And this isn't just once or twice. This is like, probably hundreds of times. And so what you have is mathematics behind it, right? You have a mathematical coincidence that is completely off the charts, which means, look, I don't know what's going on here, but there's some connection between Trump and Q, right? And whatever's happening in the world. And you just take that at face value. And then you kind of get to like, look, Q is a real thing. And look, I still have the 17 now, right? I'm still a Q-tard, so to say. I think, and I make fun of Q-tards, and I call myself a Q-tard because I think it's funny. But I think like the real Q-tards right now are stuck in like, decode Reuben sandwiches, like we always call it. And they don't drift from like what the actual mission is. And they're stuck in these like doom loops of like years ago that we were doing things without reading the tea leaves of what's actually happening with Trump and the financial system and Bitcoin, and it's all kind of extrapolated to where we are now. And he's literally, created an executive order that is stockpiling Bitcoin. He called it stockpiling, right? And so, like I said, if you are into the Q drops and you've been around this long and understand it, and you can't connect it to Bitcoin, you like have an IQ that's really, really low. I'm sorry. And you need to like wake the fuck up.
Well, so that's part of what we're going to do tonight. Tonight we're going to, because I think part of it is just access to information. Some people just haven't gone and looked into like what is it when you say that, like what do you mean? Well, and obviously it's like this is like an attention thing where everyone's attention is on where the laser pointer is, and Trump puts the laser pointer on certain news stories, and that's where our attention goes. And then we may dig on specific characters as we see them being nefarious or whatnot, but to break away from all that and go look into the financial stuff, for a lot of people that's just very overwhelming because the financial markets are very complicated. They're designed that way. It's all very convoluted, these really, really sophisticated instruments that they've come up with that are ultimately it's all like just smoke and mirrors and Ponzi schemes and different ways for them to just not actually work or produce anything, and then just take money from people who have worked and produced things. And everyone is feeling the pain of inflation and how that has affected us over the past, 5 years. So I think people can appreciate that there is a serious financial crisis in the country right now. The fiat money system that was created spun out of the Federal Reserve from 1913 was obviously a very, very bad idea, and very nefarious in the origin of all those issues. And that all needs to be rectified. Whether you believe in Bitcoin or not, I think everyone understands that the fiat money system is not the way forward, and we have to break out of that somehow. And whatever we end up going to, that's a debate that we can and will have. But what we have now just doesn't work. And so I want to wrap up the Q discussion with this dig that you did, because I thought this was this is definitely very fascinating. And this is that post that Trump did on May 31st, 2017, the famous COVFEFE dig, where Trump posted, "Despite the constant negative press, COVFEFE," and this was at 12:06 a.m. Eastern time. And then 3 hours later, he posted, "Who can figure out what the true meaning of COVFEFE?" Because people were like, he must have misspelled it, right? He must have misspelled something. And then he kind of reiterates, no, what's the true meaning of COVFEFE? And so please just walk us through this if you don't mind, like what you pieced together here.
Yeah. So again, going through all the Q drops and understanding it was about the bankers. And then, if you put an orange lens across all the Q drops, you can kind of start to see some patterns emerge. And that's kind of like what I was kind of keen on, is like looking at patterns. Like we're all pattern, recognizers. And so the Q drops provided us a way for us to connect numbers to letters to all these different things, to use simple gematria. But if you go back to the first COVFEFE dig, that's the second one, I think. Click on the first one. Keep scrolling up. It should be the first one. That's 2.0. So there should be.
dig 2.0. I'm sorry. I clicked on the wrong link. So let's do this one. 1.0. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And so look, Q always talked about nothing can stop what is coming, and Trump would tease it like, well, what is something you can't stop? You know what I mean? You can't stop death. Well, you can't stop taxes. You can't stop the sun from coming up, right? There's like certain things that are like nothing can stop what is coming. And you realize when you start to, kind of dig into the architecture of what makes Bitcoin great, you kind of realize like it's a network that literally nothing can stop, right? Think of it like Napster, right? Remember Napster back in the day when people used to download a bunch of music for free? Well, think of like Napster, like times 1,000. That's like military encrypted with like total decentralization and without the ability for people to like shut it off. And that's really kind of what Bitcoin is. It's a Napster on steroids, but it's kind of like for money. And if we keep kind of like, going through this stuff, like, for whatever reason, that tweet like bugged me because Trump was trying to like ask us if we could figure it out. Right. It was like,
he directly challenged everyone to figure something out when people were not quite at, Q hadn't happened yet. This is May 2017. So this is what, 5 months before Q started posting. So yeah.
And it just kind of like was always in the back of my head. And I didn't really, think too much of it until really after the rug pull of 2020, right? After the rug pull of 2020, I just started seeing like these like numbers in my head. I always kind of had these numbers in my head. Like again, this goes back to JFK Executive Order 11.11.0, right? Like I started piecing some of the stuff back with JFK stuff because they literally tried to, right? They assassinated JFK because he wanted to issue silver certificates to back the Federal Reserve. So there was no interest on the debt. And, if you go back and scroll up, you see that, Rome basically fell, from basically, inflation, right? They literally started reducing the amount of silver in their coins and it led to inflation. That's ultimately what kind of led to the fall of Rome. And if you scroll back up where it says nothing can stop what is coming, it's like Trump, fiddling like Nero, right? When Rome is burning. And that's kind of what,
interesting.
If you connect Rome to, losing their dynasty because of inflation and you connect the inflation with the Federal Reserve, again, this is kind of the start of the piece. Okay. And again, if you haven't read this, you have to read this like a couple times. Like it's kind of a frequency thing. And once you understand the frequency of the numerology, then eventually you may start to put the pieces together. So keep scrolling down here. Trump again, this horse
he challenges everyone, by the way. November 2019, he retweets somebody who did #COVFEFE and he says, great, but how do you know it was a mistweet? Maybe something with deep meaning. So there he is,
challenging
like 2 years after Q started posting, everyone's already in this mindset of like digging on everything and trying to find deeper meaning in everything. And here he is telling you this word, that post had deeper meaning. Go figure it out.
Yeah. And, so again, I kept, okay, it's not a mistweet. All right. What does it mean? And Q always talked about the letter Q being the number 17, right? 17th letter of the alphabet is Q, right? That was like the main thing. If there was a 17, like all of us Q-tards would go crazy in the chats or, whatever. Oh, it's a 17 and there's a 17 on the jerseys. Trump, even though when he was in office before 2017, like I think he would get jerseys that were always like the number 17.
He did. Yep.
Yeah. And there was all these different connections to the number 17. And so, if you're a simple anon, the number 17 equals Q. And, if you take it the other way, right, like you can take just any number and make it any letter as well. So keep scrolling down. And now this is kind of what's key to this. Okay. Because you're not going to understand this unless you understand Trump, unless you understand Q, unless you understand JFK Executive Order 11.11.0, unless you understand like Pepe the Frog a little bit. Yes, Pepe the Frog. I know it sounds crazy. Bitcoin, obviously an essential part. And then also like, the entire plan of the end of central bankers, right? That's kind of like the whole like thing. You have to kind of understand each one of those things to actually, figure out like maybe what's going on here. Okay. And again, I don't like say I know for sure what's happening. I say that the number of coincidences, like I ask people all the time, it's all open source. If you like can challenge me on it, I challenge anybody out there to really kind of make a case for why it's not right. But if you see this piece was done like even before Trump came out at Nashville, right? Like this literally foretold like Trump becoming a Bitcoin maximalist. All right, so scroll down a little bit. And then we've got just the simple, like, and again, guys, I'm not a numerology guy, never was until like the Q thing started and I started seeing 17s everywhere. And, 1111 with JFK's executive order, like I didn't really understand angel numbers. I still really don't understand it. Okay. So don't think I'm like that guy that's all into the woo, that's thinking all this crazy shit. It's really not. Numbers
so basically what you did is you just took the word COVFEFE and just like with the number 17 equaling Q, you just assigned it a numerical value based on where it falls in the alphabet.
Yeah, and like, I would run all these different Monte Carlo simulations in my head of like, oh, what could have COVFEFE meant? And maybe it's just letters and numbers. And we extrapolate, what does that mean? And so again, if you take those numbers, 3, 15, 22, 6, 5, 6, 5, you kind of like it actually extrapolates into like just a number of ones. Like if you kind of derive it all the way down, because the 315th day of the year is actually 11/11. 22 is an 11/11, right?
Is that true? The 315th day of the year is November 11th?
Yes, it is.
Okay, okay, interesting.
And then you have 6, 5, 6, 5, which is an 11 and 11. So technically, like you could say all of those is just a number string of 11s. Again, Andrew Jackson, if you guys don't know the history of Andrew Jackson, go look him up. He was one of the most badass presidents that we've ever had that eliminated the central banks. Funny enough, his birthday is actually on March 15th too, which I thought was kind of funny.
That is funny.
And, if we can just keep going here, we'll just and again, like what I want you guys to do, because what I did over the years, what I would like put little data points in my head that I thought were important. Like, oh, like Andrew Jackson, like, oh, JFK executive order 1110, like, oh, certain things. And it's just like a little nugget. Like not one of these things alone is going to prove any of this. But what you get is a number of data points that kind of basically lead someone to be like, oh, okay, this is getting more interesting. Right. And you had Donald Trump retweet this. Can you imagine a president taking on the Federal Reserve System today? That's what Andrew Jackson did in 1832, and it changed America forever. Jackson once asked how he would clean up the corruption in Washington, D.C., and his reply was drain the swamp. And I think actually there's like actually a 1-5. And so again, with the 315. Okay. 315 is like the baseline, but it can be any combination of 315. It can be a 153. It can be a, 351. It can be 135. Like, I just want you to kind of get those numbers in your head, because it's kind of like, I want to call it like a quantum, let's call it like you're in the quantum field and you're kind of like on a frequency. That's kind of how I like basically kind of characterize it, because I believe you can manifest things right through, through prayers, through different things in the quantum realm to like, obviously like expect some certain kind of results. And I think they use some of this stuff to actually help their plan. And so if you look at that tweet, I think it was tweeted at like some like, I don't know, it was like an 11/11 or 315. I didn't put it in there, but
8:31 a.m. on 3/15/2022.
Oh, so the Kanekoa one is the one that I was talking above. That one.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
That one, I didn't grab the thing, but if you go to Twitter archive and pull up that tweet, there's like it's like 11:53 or something. It's kind of funny.
Interesting. Okay.
Keep showing down, but again, just put this in your head. Like, okay, I know it sounds crazy, and again, this is just a Devin Nunes tweet. And again, like you guys, I'm just giving you guys, these are like samples I've had for, when I wrote this article. But there's like hundreds of these things sitting out there, and we decode them or throw them in the chats all the time, because they're constantly happening. They like literally never stopped. And so if you keep scrolling down,
well, I mean, this one's interesting because Devin Nunes was made the head of Truth Social, right? And so Trump appointed Devin Nunes as the head of Truth Social. That's a significant appointment. And then here he is posting on March on 3/15/2022 and hashtag COVFEFE. Good. Good truth mornings always begin with a strong cup of hashtag COVFEFE. I mean, that's notable. I mean, that's very notable.
It is notable. We we would be like, look, have on the lookout. It's 3:15. Like, see what, if there's anything going on. And sure enough, you get shit like this.
Yeah.
And so again, 11/11, 3:15, 3 times 15 is 45, right? Trump was a 45th president. But funny enough, like Satoshi's birthday is actually on April 5th. So like his synonym is his anonymous profile in the Bitcoin talk forums. He put his birthday as April 5th, right? And so I think that was kind of funny, and that it was like literally like Trump was the 45th president.
Interesting. Yeah, 45. Okay, yeah.
3 times 15 is 45. Like you kind of get these again. You get these kind of these repeating numbers. And again, November 11th is a significant date and definitely part of the repeating number sequence because if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration, right? If you keep scrolling down, you get numbers, rules, the universe, right? Like everything is written in everything in the world is written literally in the language of mathematics. Okay. And if you go to looking at some of those drops, scroll up a little bit, you'll see, so keep going down a little bit. 187 again, 187 is a great drop because it kind of basically like summarizes the whole thing of the corruption of money, the Titanic, the Rothschilds. Like it's literally the entire kind of like history of the last 100 years of how we've got to this point, and that each one of these presidents helped rein in the power of the Fed, where it was JFK Executive Order 11110. We had Ronald Reagan with Executive Order 12369, which was actually the executive order that basically looked at where all the tax receipts went, and it basically proved that $0 went to any form of public good, and that most of the tax receipts went to just interest on the debt. Okay, I think you labeled it "Drain the Swamp" as well. But then you get this 1111 drop. So the first drop with any bankings in it is basically drop 135. Again, it's a 315.
Interesting. Yeah, this is the one where they're just like listing out every single central bank in the world, and the list is enormous.
Yeah, it's like 3 or 4 drops long. It's 11. It's on 1111. At the end of it, it says, look, the IRS and the Federal Reserve are basically, private organizations on their own piece of land that are, basically immune to U.S. laws. And you're like, well, that's kind of messed up. And so you keep kind of going down through this dig, and you get, a clean house is very important.
Posted at 11:11 a.m.
Okay. Yeah, and we all know that, like, when Jesus was in the temple, and he needed a clean temple, he needed to cleanse the temple of the money changers, clean temple, clean house. It kind of resonates with the story of the Bible, which I believe, to where basically people have been kept in bondage and servitude their entire lives, and that there was a way for people to break free. Okay.
Yeah. And a big argument I've heard you and a lot of others make about Bitcoin is like the whole system of usury, and how getting out of usury is a major step in like liberating people from this banking cabal. And obviously Jesus was all about that, and the Bible outlaws usury and says that, and that's a big reason why certain banking institutions emerged, the Rothschilds being one of them, is because it was prohibited for Christian nations to engage in usury. So then you had Jewish bankers coming in, and they became the issuers of debt.
Yeah, I mean, look, fiat lux, right? The first 2 words in the Bible is God decreeing, value, God decreeing life. Let there be light, right? And so what we have is we have men who are decreeing value on certain things in a godlike way. And what happens if you give, a single human the power to decree value over things? Well, shit starts to go pretty quick, right? It starts to get messed up. And this is just proof that JFK, Executive Order 11110, literally there were, notes printed without the Federal Reserve note, right? There were United States note, which means there was no interest attached to it. Okay. Because guess who pays the interest, right? We pay the interest. We're the slaves. We're the goyim. We're the sheep that pay that. And what you had during COVID was Trump basically like printing a huge amount of money. Okay. And he did something similar. If you scroll up a little bit, he did something similar to what JFK did, to where he basically like merged the Fed into the Treasury. And that's kind of what 1111 kind of did as well. So if you look towards the end of that, like when Trump was printing all that money during COVID, he set up BlackRock to set up these SPVs, these special purpose vehicles that allowed them to just buy fucking everything they wanted, but they're really not allowed to do that, you know? And so essentially, like, Trump was basically the Federal Reserve chair back during COVID because of the way he was able to kind of bring in, BlackRock and the Fed into the Treasury by doing these special things. And because they weren't allowed to do any of this shit, they just did it. And then funny enough, on 3/15/2020, they reduced the reserve requirement ratio to 0.0 for all the banks, which means they didn't have to hold any of your money. They could loan it, every single penny out, which I thought was funny too. And so,
yeah. And for those who aren't aware, I mean, this is Joe Lang did an article on this as well. Like, I'm trying to pull it up, but there was a I don't know if was it Bloomberg or was it Business Insider who published an article that explicitly said it appears that Trump just merged the Federal Reserve with the Treasury. So this isn't just like G Money speculating if this happened. This is like everyone out, like mainstream, establishment outlets also recognizing that based on the moves Trump was making in 2020, in March of 2020, he did appear to use the SPVs to merge the Fed and the Treasury.
Yeah, it was written by Jim Bianco, who I think he was writing for Yahoo, I think, at the time. And so Jim Bianco actually put this article out. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, here it is. Yeah, Jim Bianco's the Fed's cure risks being worse than the disease.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, so that's the original article that I linked to. And yeah, I mean, this is all, like, again, open source to where you can see what happened. And then if you keep going down during 2020, you get keep going. Actually, we can hold there. So what also happened during 2020, which is funny, was you had the something called the OCC. So there's this thing, and nobody's ever even heard of it. It's called the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency. Okay. And like during this kind of COVID timeframe, I think it wasn't until May, but Trump, like, the guy that was by the way, the OCC is in charge of 70% of all the banks in the US. Okay. They're basically like, they run like basically all the banking charters in the entire US. They kind of like oversee it all. And what happened was during that time frame, again, during COVID, no one's paying attention. He hired a guy named Brian Brooks. Okay. And Brian Brooks was literally the chief legal officer of Coinbase. Okay. So this is like in 2020, right before the election was, during COVID and all that stuff. It's not in here yet. Just pause for a minute. I'm just going to bring this up. But so Brian Brooks comes in, and again, Trump, not knowing anything about crypto, right, saying he thinks Bitcoin is a scam. The banking guy he hires is the chief legal guy for Coinbase, which is obviously the biggest like crypto exchange in the entire US. And then Brian Brooks, and Steve Mnuchin make it legal for banks to custody Bitcoin back in 2020, right? Nobody ever picked up on this. It's all went under the rug. But again, you can go back and look, and I actually have a specific article that literally dictates Brian Brooks' career. He then, Trump thought he did such a great job, he actually hired him to a full-time position. But of course, the Democrats filibustered or didn't get his appointment in time because it was a temporary appointment. And so he was never fully onboarded by the time Joe Biden got into office. And so you're like, wow. So Trump like pulled in the power of the Fed to the Treasury. He hired like the chief legal officer at Coinbase. And then he basically like allowed banks to custody Bitcoin. But then of course, you know what happened? You had the SEC, which basically banned it. But like Trump set up all the framework in his first term, funny enough. Okay.
Yeah. And while he's doing that, it's worth noting, like you said, he was publicly saying he thought Bitcoin was a scam. So he's publicly saying, yeah, I don't trust Bitcoin. I think it's a scam. But then he's doing all the moves behind the scenes that you're laying out.
And that's why like half the stuff that comes out of Trump's mouth, like I don't even really listen to anymore, because like a lot of it's for like other people than us, because like when you're like paying attention to the signal, like you're only going to get maybe 10 to 20% of what Trump says is actual signal out of all the noise he spits out. And like he does an excellent job of like being the guy that is like just rug pulling everybody. But yeah, like actions speak louder than words. Like, why did Trump do this if he hated crypto so much, right? And so anyways, that's just kind of the preface of what happened back then. But we can also get into Pepe right now. If you scroll down a little or scroll back up again. Okay, Pepe. You can't just use meme magic. So scroll down a little bit. You can go down a little bit lower. You can't just use meme magic to evoke an ancient Egyptian frog god in order to get elected president. It's like, that's where you're wrong, kiddo. Praise Keck. Right. And so for those of you that fought in the Q drops and fought back in the Anon worlds, like Pepe was like, he was like our little, like, soldier. And if you go back to like military memetics, there's actually a thing in this to where you can cut through like a lot of the bullshit and propaganda just with images, memes, and it was proved to be very effective.
We actually did, I think it was chapter 14. We did the meme war of 2016. So we dug deep into that.
Perfect. And so you guys know all about it and how like, it acts like a virus and like it just keeps spreading and like, it just is like natural phenomenon that happened, but it works in a way that just basically like upends the entire, control structure of the media. And I believe like the Q operation was to disrupt the entire, media organizations because, of course, 95% of the media is owned by 6 corporations. And so how are we going to do this entire plan unless you like were allowed to like get information out and decentralize it to the masses? Well, you get a bunch of, people online and have them digging into stuff and give them some stuff that's real, a bunch of stuff that's fake, and then allow that to basically propagate online. Okay. And which it did, right? It did like in a huge way. And so that, the biggest part of the Q, I think, of just coming and putting the drops in was to basically, demolish the current news media and the propaganda, which I think you did.
For sure.
Okay. So what does that have to do with Pepe the Frog? Okay. So Trump tweeted himself out as Pepe, right? And so it's funny, like, when I'm going through all this stuff, like I just noticed certain things. If you scroll down a little bit more, you see that like Trump tweeted it out on October 13th, 2015. Okay. Now, for whatever reason, like every time I would look at this, like it said like 153 at like 10/13/2015. So
yeah. And this particular video became like the anthem for like Trump's campaign, and it's actually the outro video that we played at the end of the meme war episode.
Gotcha. Yeah. And so like this little video that guy posted, like with a Pepe that's gone now, but like that's a screen cap of it. There's a 315 in there. Okay.
Yeah. So like, I'm noticing that. Yeah.
Okay. And so and again, like Ghost, I'm not like, oh, well, that's kind of interesting. Like there's a connection, right? I didn't really realize what the connection was until later because I didn't know about like rare Pepe NFTs, and we'll get to that at some point. But like, just if you go back to the dig, you've got Donald Trump posting himself as Pepe the Frog on 10/13/2015. So how does this connect? Well, 10/13/2015. Okay, there's the first Pepe, like there's like Pepes, like these things called Pepes, right? That were minted on the Bitcoin blockchain back in September 9th, 2016. Okay. And I had like no idea these things were, I've been into Bitcoin since 2016, but I didn't know these Pepe the Frogs were ever even part of the Bitcoin ecosystem until like 2021. Okay. And so again, I'm kind of going backwards, right, in time and like, holy shit, like what are these frogs that were like in it? They're like cute pictures of frogs online. But if you go back in the story of Pepe, you have Hillary Clinton basically attacked Pepe the Frog directly. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The ADL came out and said it was a hate symbol, said it was, because someone put a Nazi on him. Donald Trump, Pepe the Frog. And so, but anyways, like this happened on 9/11. This was like 9/11. But for whatever reason, some guy like minted the first one on 9/9. This is like 2 days before all this happened. And so it's kind of interesting that like almost like someone maybe knew what was going to happen or what was going on. But anyways, this Pepe the Frog, if you look at it, like the first card ever minted. This is it. This is Nakamoto.
This is the first card ever minted?
This is the first rare Pepe card ever minted. Correct.
Yeah.
And if you see, what numbers do you see on that card, Ghost?
It says 15. I see 3. I see 1. It says Nakamoto card. It says the creator, and then the description is the creator of Bitcoin, one of the most rare Pepes in existence.
Right. But you see the 315. The 315 is
absolutely 315 right there.
Yeah. And so I'm like, well, like, okay, someone made this card like randomly and put like 315 on it.
13 months before, almost 14 months before Q started posting.
Correct. Right.
Yep. Okay.
Which is weird, right? Like, okay, like this, by the way, the person that did this is still anonymous. Nobody knows who it is. Okay.
And that's Satoshi's last name. We'll get to Satoshi in a minute, but that's just, I just want to point that out.
Correct. And so again, people may be putting these in the back of their heads. Okay, there's G Money, he's crazy, but like some of this stuff is starting to kind of like make sense. 315th day of the year is 11/11. Trump posts out this COVFEFE thing. We've got this 315. Okay, G, we've got like, Trump is Pepe on October 13th, 2015. And then we've got this card that's 315. Like, I get it. It's going to be kind of like hard for people to grasp at first, but like, that's also because people have the attention span of a gnat. And so you have to actually like, kind of like really like, take some of this information in and like look at it from a mathematical perspective. But that's just proof of when it was minted. So like, I'm not making this up because anybody can go look at it. Because on the blockchain, like it's immutable. You can't change any of the numbers. Okay. So again, you get the 315. Now here's where like things get really fucking weird. Okay. With this card is called the Games of Trump. Okay. Now we all know like the Q-tards all know about 17, right? And so on this special card that was minted on the Bitcoin blockchain, you have what's on there. You have Trump as a dragon, right? Or on a dragon. It's called the Games of Trump. Last year was the, year of the dragon, but this was minted back in 2017. And you look at their 17, look at the hearts are 17, the shield is 17, and the sword is like infinity. Okay.
Yeah.
Which, okay, 17's G, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Keep scrolling down.
But this was made before Q, right?
Yes.
Before Q ever posted.
On
this is August 31st, 2017. So 2 months before Q posted.
And look at the quantity it was minted, 1717.
Right? 1,717 made.
So there's like 17s all over this thing. It's 2 months before like Q even starts dropping. And like, what is this? Like, I think it's the biggest piece of open source proof that this plan revolves around Bitcoin. And I don't think it's undeniable because I know, Ghost, how the enemy literally puts stuff right out into the open in people's faces and like what they're going to do to you just because it's part of their humiliation ritual that they have to tell you what they're doing ahead of time. Yep. And it's almost like the good guys did the same thing. Like, look, this is what we're going to, and I realize the 17 is obviously a lot more compelling than the 315, but we're still going to go through this.
Yeah.
And so, that's interesting, right? I mean,
of course.
And what I would recommend too is like, I challenge any of you AI dorks out there to go run this through an AI like thinker, deep think, whatever, and like try to prove me wrong. Try to prove me wrong that the mathematical coincidences are like not significant. That's really what this is about. If you can say like someone was able to do this with all this different connections, then I think like it gives more credence to it because it's like mathematical anomalies is really what I'm looking at. Anyway, so you go through this whole series of cards. There's 1,774 of these rare Pepe cards. Nobody knows who the creator was, but keep scrolling down.
This is pretty interesting, though. So the 315th card of the series is Pepe Rare. And then if you go to this,
which is a mirror of rare Pepe, right? Pepe.
Yeah.
Pepe
and if you go to Series 3 card 15, so I don't know what that means, Series 3 card 15. I guess there's like different like issuances of these cards.
Yeah, there's like different series of them, and of course, Series 3 card 15 is Putin Pepe. Right?
It's Putin Pepe. I think that's notable for sure.
Yeah, and look at the expression they both have is like the smug Pepe look with like the little hand on the chin, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So and what I think also is possible is I think these cards were potentially used for steganography. You can pass encoded messages through images if you have the correct key. To actually look at what's going on.
Yeah. And I mean, what I find compelling about everything you just went through with these cards is that this was all done pre-Q. Like this was all done before Q started posting. And I would argue that a lot of this stuff is still pretty on the fringe. Like people, like this isn't like a mainstream thing within the truth movement. Back then it was even more fringe, right? So it's not like this was something that, like Anons would have been into, like on 4chan. I mean, this was something that was pretty fringe at the time.
I would post this on 4chan and nobody would pick it up. Like I was completely ignored. The Anons fucking ignored me. I get ignored really by everybody. I've been the black sheep for like, years. You know this, right?
Yeah.
And anyways, you can keep going. And then we have the Rush. So this is funny, right? Like the Russian embassy literally tweets out an image of Pepe.
Wait, this is part of the post, is this image of Pepe?
Oh yeah. Oh, 100%. That's the tweet. If you click on it, it's still there, I think. You can still click on it, and it's still there. But what's funny is they tweeted that out on January 9th, on January 9th, which is the date that Satoshi open sourced the entire Bitcoin blockchain to the world. And so you're like, well, the Russian embassy posts a picture of Pepe on January 9th, which is the same date of, releasing the open source intel to the entire world, I think, or the open source Bitcoin blockchain to the entire world. I think there's like kind of a quasi connection there of all the dates they picked. They picked January 9th. So I think it's interesting. Now it wasn't January 9th, 2009. It was January 9th. I forget what year it is, but it's just an interesting day of all the days they picked, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Melania Trump. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, this one is interesting. The Melania, I remember when this happened because, for those who weren't paying attention in 2001, and I know everybody was paying attention in 2001 because Trump was out of office and everyone was kind of, panicking and blackpilling and upset about it. But if you go back and you dig into your memory bank, Trump pretty much went like MIA for 2021. Like he was off the radar. He was not posting on social media. He was not active. He was like gone for most of 2021.
Yeah, golfing, whatever he was doing.
So like when Melania Trump posted this is January 3rd, 2022, almost a year to the day of January 6th. January comes around, the whole year, everyone spent like, is Trump coming back or what? Like, what the hell is going on? Did Trump really just walk away and let Joe Biden become president? Like, what the hell is happening? And then Melania Trump posts, of all things, she posts a happy birthday message to Satoshi Nakamoto.
Yeah, on the anniversary of the Genesis block, which is January 3rd. So that's significant, right? That's like, wow, that's interesting that Melania would know about this. And of course, she came out with her own NFT that was a shitcoin, right? It was a shitcoin, but like she wished Satoshi Nakamoto, like she obviously knows about Bitcoin, or they know about Bitcoin, but they're launching shitcoins, right?
Yeah, I mean, she says right here, it is widely reported that Bitcoin's market cap exceeds USD $1 trillion. Today marks the 13th anniversary of the Bitcoin Genesis block. Happy anniversary, Satoshi Nakamoto, Melania NFT. I mean, I mean, for her to know that, for her to be tracking that, and then talk about the Genesis block, and we'll get to what the Genesis block is in a minute, because people are probably saying, what the hell does that mean? We'll explain that in a minute when we go back to the origin story. But that's fascinating that Melania Trump, of all people, after pretty much being silent for a year, would come out and say something like this.
Yeah, and look, she released her entire series of NFTs on a shitcoin blockchain. But it's funny because, again, it's about pulling signal out of noise. They're not just going to come out and tell you this entire plan, right? They couldn't. It wouldn't be fair. They had to go around it in a way that, that's why Trump has his shitcoins, right? He's really teaching people financial literacy. He's teaching people about money, and the best way to do that is with meme coins. Like, you're going to get rug pulled at some point. And so, anyway, so again, Satoshi Nakamoto, again, born on 4/5. We all know Trump is the 45th president. Q would always say D5, D5, D5. Everybody thought it was December 5th. And, when George Bush died or whatever. And like, I thought it was maybe other deeper meanings behind it. But again, there's Trump talking about Bitcoin, saying he thought it was a scam.
Yeah. And in hindsight, like with this being 6 years, what is this, 2019? This is probably worth listening to. Is this a long video?
The opening bell for
it's 45 seconds. This is worth watching because, given everything that's happened, like, let's listen to what he actually says here.
This is right. This is newer. That's not when he tweeted that was 2019, but this video is it's newer. I forget what the video was, but yeah, if you want, it's only like a minute long. He called it a currency.
To ring. I'll ask you one last question. You don't like Bitcoin? You wouldn't invest in Bitcoin? Do you invest in the stock market at this moment?
So not at this moment. I think it's high. So I have not invested in the stock market at this moment. I have in the past, but I have not at this moment. I think it's
If he's saying the stock market's high, this is definitely during Joe Biden's presidency. So this is probably like 2022, something like that.
high. Bitcoin, it just seems like a scam. I was surprised. With us, it was at 6,000 and much lower. I don't like it because it's another currency competing against the dollar. Essentially, it's a currency competing against the dollar. I want the dollar to be the currency of the world. That's what I've always said.
That's fascinating. Bitcoin's a little high right now, guys. It was $6,000 when I was president. It's a little high. What's it trading at right now, G?
$106,000.
Okay.
Yeah, but essentially it's a currency. Seems like a scam, but essentially it's a currency. Like again, there's noise and signal. If you can pull out the noise, pull out the signal from the noise, like you would understand. Point.
He just called it. He did just call it a currency. He did just call it a currency that competes directly with the United States, with the U.S. dollar.
Right,
yeah.
Right. Okay, and then again, actually scroll back up a little bit.
Yep.
So, wait, scroll back down. Sorry, go down a little bit. COVFEFE House Bill, right? So then there's the COVFEFE House Bill, which was the Communications Over Various Feeds Electronically for Engagement Act, COVFEFE, right? Like maybe a communication system, like maybe like a blockchain system. Like Bitcoin essentially is really like a hardened military encrypted communication system that can't be hacked, right? Remember the Enigma machine when we were able to hack it, and we obviously were able to turn the tide of the war because we could interrupt German communications through the Enigma cryptography. You can't interrupt the cryptographic proofs of Bitcoin. Like it's corruptible. It's in you can't actually break the code.
This is interesting. Yeah, this is interesting. So it was introduced in June of 2017. So Trump's president, and it says this bill amends provisions governing presidential records to revise the definition of documentary material to include social media, revise the definition of presidential records to include any personal and an official social media account, and define social media as any form of electronic communication, such as a website for social networking and microblogging, through which users create an online community to share information, ideas, personal messages, and other content.
Yeah, in reality, Bitcoin's just a networking system. It's the biggest social network on the planet for money. And, in essence, it's kind of funny that this bill was specifically about communications, because my entire dig is dude, COVFEFE is about Bitcoin being a communication system, a money system, a part of the entire plan for this entire thing.
I remember when that bill got passed, because I think he did the COVFEFE post in May, and then this bill gets passed or gets submitted or whatever in June. And what it did is it made Trump's Twitter feed enshrined in the Library of Congress forever. So every single post Trump has ever done, even going back prior to being president, talking about what's his name's nipples protruding in Congress, it's all of those are now enshrined as official presidential communications.
Yeah, and so I think there's some signal there, right? In the fact
definitely.
It's a Communications Act. And here's Pepe. So here's a Q post, Q drop 2712, right? Which is a Pepe the Frog. And it says, credit Jimenez who deciphered Red Castle. It says, why must we communicate this way? So they're including a Pepe the Frog and including communications, right? And so what does that mean? Well, maybe that means they were using Pepe to use steganography, right? There was a drop in the Q drops that talked about pixel knots. Pixel knots was another cryptographically, proven system where you can encode messages using images, and basically, you could basically try to figure it out. That's what that whole cicada. Remember that whole cicada thing?
Yeah,
For Q, that was literally it was decoding steganography, and it was decoding ciphers with pictures. And funny that
that was the 2012 thing where people were running around the world trying to figure out cicada. Is that what you're talking about? The cicada?
Yeah,
thing?
I think it was. Was it old as 2012? I don't know how old it was, but there's.
It might have been 2014 or something like that. Yeah, but it was it was like somebody cryptically posting stuff online, and then people were running around the world trying to physically solve riddles that were supposed to be spread out around the world.
Yeah, and cicada had some interesting things because their Twitter account is literally 12315-070-51321. It's like a number decipher. It has 315 in it. And so you're like, holy shit, maybe the cicada thing is somehow connected too, because it was all connected there. And so, basically the 40,000 foot view on COVFEFE is like, this isn't really about politics. This is about preserving our way of life and protecting the generations that follow. And really, this is about the invisible enemy of inflation. This is the invisible enemy of money printing and corruption through central bankers. And then, this last drop on October 31st, it says literally, are you ready to finish what we started? Nothing can stop what is coming is not just a catchphrase, Ghost. And of course, October 31st is this date of the Satoshi white paper in 2008. And so I think that's an odd coincidence that, this Q drop below 4944 has that specific language in it.
Yeah. And I mean, like when he says we are living in biblical times, it invokes the imagery that you had earlier up at the beginning of the post of Jesus flipping the tables over, because he walks into the temple and he realizes that it's been converted into a marketplace where people are issuing usury and engaging in usury and have turned it into something, have taken a sacred place and turned it into something very, very evil, a system designed to enslave people through financial debt and enslavement, debt slaves. And so that's why he makes the whip and starts flipping over tables and whipping the bankers. The only time that I think we know of that Jesus became violent.
The only time.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah, Matthew 21:12, right? The root of all evil, because the love of money. And I know it's love of money, not money itself, but there's a Bitcoin white paper to October 31st, right? So they chose October 31st to be, the day it was. And so that's an interesting Q drop. A P2P cash system called Bitcoin, completely decentralized with no central server or trusted parties, because everything is based on crypto proof instead of trust. Give it a try. Take a look at the screenshots and design paper. So there's the Bitcoin white paper, and then the actual code doesn't get launched until January 3rd, 2009, right? So a few months go by before Satoshi releases it in 2009. We can keep scrolling. But then what's funny about this 1111, so I was digging all this stuff back in 2020, I think 2021. And then Q drops in 2022 on 1111. Who are the silent thieves? How are they manipulating you? How are they stealing your wealth? Bubble crash, steal, lie, repeat. What is inflation, right? It was almost like G Money wrote this post. It was funny because I was still friends with some of the Anons, and Pepe Deluxe, I remember he was literally mad when this drop came out, because it was he's like, it's like fucking G Money wrote this thing. What the hell is this?
I remember when this came out, because this was like a month after John started I think John started Badlands October 2022, if I'm not mistaken, or something like that.
Yeah.
So this was right after Badlands started, and I remember everybody saying, "Holy shit, this is G Money wrote this thing," and that's what you mean when you say that, is because of the 1111. And then of course, who are the silent thieves? Why are they manipulating you? How are they stealing your wealth? What is inflation? Taxation without representation. I mean, yeah, this does sound like it's written by you.
Any more clear, and to do it on 1111, you're like, of all the days Q chose to drop that specific nugget, you're going to say the 1111 doesn't make sense. I'm sorry, but the first purchase Michael Saylor made averaged out to $11,111.11. You get General Flynn, who tweeted about Bitcoin on February 1st, 2015, right? And so there's a post, Death to the Triumvirate, which is, again, back in ancient Rome on 1122 in connection to JFK. That's just a little image I made. And then 1122, can't wait for the green light. Potentially some kind of black swan event, or Bitcoin happens. Again, I wrote this article years ago. Obviously, this is old. How old was this? If you scroll back up.
This was posted in, let's go to the top.
So it's a little bit dated, obviously, because obviously new information has come out. But
March 15th, of course, 2023.
It's over 2 years old, which, I've got a lot more information now. But this is the best, chance or dig I could do at it. But if you go to COVFEFE Dig 2.0, because I followed up with it, because, at this point, we didn't really know about Lori and stuff to some degree. Lori was still kind of out in the wings. And so like there's Trump coming down the elevator when he first announces, his candidacy, right? It's literally got currency exchange in the background of his gold building, right?
Hey, before we do the dig, let's hit the ads before we do the second dig. And I'm glad that your first dig had some of the history there, so we can kind of note that this was all started January 3rd, 2009 is when the blockchain went live. All right, so let me pull up Goldco. And it is ironic that we're doing a Goldco ad on the Bitcoin episode, but that's just the way it goes.
I love it.
We didn't get the this is not synchronicity on this episode. All right. Did you know? I'm sorry. Wait, I don't have the right one pulled up. Hold on. Stand by for 1 second.
Stand by, people.
All right. Did you know? Oh, whoops. You know what? I think Jessica actually went back and changed it. So okay. Well, let's see. We're gonna see if we can finagle this. We're gonna do. Do I have the river ad loaded? Looks like I made a comment to her and she did do it. Okay, great. Well, hold on. All right, I just rug pulled y'all. We're gonna do a Bitcoin ad. Did you know that Bitcoin is now a top 5 global asset? Now's the time to buy, and River's here to help. Prepare to maximize your Bitcoin returns without the emotion. Introducing River AI, Bitcoin advisor at your fingertips. Stop trying to time the market. Do it with confidence. At River, you get 0 fee recurring buys, 3.8% Bitcoin interest on cash, US-based support, business accounts, and so much more. Don't forget about Bitcoin interest on cash, which can accelerate your business growth too. Businesses can now earn 3.8% on cash paid in Bitcoin. There's more money to fuel your next big move. Get started at badlandsmedia.tv/river. Move your cash to River today and start earning a real interest rate with Bitcoin. The future is now. That's badlandsmedia.tv/river. Sweet.
Yeah. Love those guys at River. They're awesome.
Yeah. The River guys have been great. So we appreciate River. All right. Well, let's get back to the dig.
Yeah, so I mean, there's Trump coming down the escalators, the golden escalators, with currency exchange in the background, which I think is kind of interesting. Is he changing the currency, type of thing? Again, just
interesting.
Keep scrolling down. It's kind of recapping some stuff. Okay, so the reason I got into this insurgency is because, like, the U.S. military put out a guide called the Counterinsurgency Manual. Okay. And the Counterinsurgency Manual was basically abbreviated COIN, funny enough, COIN, right? Which is like short for counterinsurgency. And like JFK, when he was president, he talked about he talked about a secret society. He talked about a small group of people having the levers of power behind politicians and other things. And, General Flynn described what the media did and these people as an insurgency. And if you look up the definition of insurgency, like one of them is a shadow government or a deep state. Okay. And I don't think like it's that hard to like come to terms with that. There probably was a shadow government, deep state, right, working behind the scenes that was in control. That was an insurgency, right? There was an insurgency, meaning there was a group of really powerful people that were controlling things, and like your vote didn't matter, like that shit didn't matter. Maybe change little small things, but never structural change that needed to be changed. And so it was really just kind of a game of these power players just kind of rug pulling you. And so if you scroll down, you get just the insurgency defined because it's described in the CIA manual, it's described in these other different manuals, and it, again, shadow government, JFK talked about it. So if you keep scrolling down, you get to his speech, which you can listen to. We don't have to go through it. But again, the government is, anyway, so
talk about the nature of secret societies, and by their very nature, they're evil. Yep.
And, multiple times in the Q drops, there is shadow government, right? And you have this 1356 on 513. Again, because counterinsurgency and insurgency is a battle over legitimacy. Okay. And again, here's coin, right? Bit equals digital, and coin equals literally counterinsurgency. And a counterinsurgency is actually defined as a comprehensive civilian and military effort taken to simultaneously defeat and contain insurgency and address its root causes. Okay. So
yeah, this is one of my favorite drops.
So like a civilian and military effort, it sounds kind of a lot like the Q drops, like activating the civilians. But how are you going to weaponize these people, right? You got the coin manual, whole of government. You see there, it's got the coin. Okay. And then on May 31st, Ghost, the same day of COVFEFE, you get Q extrapolating insurgency and posting a link to the coin manual itself. So if you scroll down,
that's a hell of a delta there.
Yeah. So if you scroll down, you've got comprehensive civilian and military effort. Like it literally has the coin, right? It says coin in there. It describes it. And if you click on that link, it's, the link above is the, and here's the, that link, obviously you can't click on it, but there it is. Yeah, I guess you can. That's the guy. So January 3rd, 2009, guess what, right? That's the same month and year as the Genesis block, right? January 2009.
Oh, wait a second. Yeah, wait. Let's pull up. Where's the? Yep, January 2009. So the Genesis block. So explain real quick before we go any further. What is the Genesis block?
Yeah, so the Genesis block is basically like the start of Bitcoin. Okay, it was the first block mined, first 50 coins, because Bitcoin started at 0. Right now we're like at 19.6 or 7 million coins out of 21 million. Like the network has grown from 0. Right? Nobody started off with any like pre-mined coins. And even the 50 first coins Satoshi minted were unspendable. You couldn't spend those first 50 coins because you needed a previous reference block to actually spend them on, because there's a delay between when blocks get mined to when you can spend them to prevent a double spend. Typically, I think it's 10 blocks. And so like, since there is no block previous to that, you can't even spend the first 50 coins. And so the Genesis block is literally the first one ever created. And then it wasn't until January 9th, 6 days later, until, Satoshi open sourced it so everybody could mine Bitcoin.
Yeah. So real quick, just for my own knowledge, and I'm sure for the audience's knowledge, mining Bitcoin, because I think that's something that a lot of people get stuck on before they get into the more complex aspects of this. You just said that the first 50 Bitcoin you couldn't even spend, and that's because mining Bitcoin. Can you explain like a TLDR of how, like, what is mining Bitcoin? How does it work? And what does it mean when you say that?
Yeah. And so what I like to compare Bitcoin to is think of like a global lottery that you use really like expensive computers to basically randomly guess a secret password that the lottery then will issue you. And every 10 minutes, there's a new lottery, and every 10 minutes, there's a new winner. And the more hash power, the more computers you plug into the network, the greater chances you have of solving that equation or guessing correctly. Now, it sounds kind of funny, but when you extrapolate it, like it's the best way to incentivize the entire world to basically, join the network. Not only that, but you can't censor anybody. You can't like kick anybody off because it's all open source from competing in this game. It's a global game is what it is. And Bitcoin miners are literally just randomly guessing a lot of times, right, this equation, and it restarts every 10 minutes, and there's a new winner and a new player. There's new winners every 10 minutes. Every 10 minutes, the blockchain gets, the person who guessed it correctly gets rewarded. Currently, it's at 3.125. And so Bitcoin has a set inflation schedule. Back in 2009, it was 50 Bitcoin per every block. So 50 Bitcoins every 10 minutes. Then every 4 years, that gets cut in half. And so 2013, it went to 25. 2017, it went to 12.5, right? 2021, it went to 6.25. And now we're at the fifth epoch, which is 3.125. And it's going to continue until all Bitcoins are mined, which won't be until the year 2140. It literally takes an extra 100 years to mine the last 1% of the Bitcoin protocol.
Interesting. So because previously, like years ago, I used to think that mining was about like checking the ledger of like transactions. It's not that. It's actually you say it's guessing like a password, basically, is what you're describing.
100%. It's a random lottery in guessing the next password to an equation that you can solve. And what's great about this, there's a difficulty adjustment too. And so if all these new computers come online and they're able to guess the answer quicker, it makes it harder to basically target a 10-minute block time. So it's always targeting 10 minutes. And so even if there's some radical advances in new computers, it's always going to target that 10-minute block time. But again, the most special thing about this is it monetizes energy, you guys. Monetization of energy is the biggest thing that humanity could have ever done. So January 13th is one that was actually does, because what it does is it incentivizes the entire world to produce the cheapest amount of abundant energy possible. Okay. Right. Then we get into Tesla, we get into the free energy, we get into all these different things that we believe, right, the powers that be have held back from us for so many years because they have wanted to keep, humanity kind of stuck in this just nonstop rug pull to where, we don't get any advances. And now we see what's happening with Elon, with Tesla, with rockets. Like it's crazy the amount of technology that's coming out. At the same time, this currency is now taking hold as the foundational currency.
Yeah, and that's kind of we can finish up this Substack if you like, but I'd also like to dedicate some time to software and just talk about Lowry.
Yeah, so if you keep going, it'll feed right into that.
Okay, perfect.
Again, no political solution to financial solution. Keep going. Love of money is a root, right? Counterinsurgency is addressing military, civilian, the root of the cause. Keep going. Okay, and then keep going. Get to what happened in 1971. Counterinsurgency God, abbreviated coin. Yep, keep going. Oh, here's the 315 again. So you see the three? Can you see the? So here's the Genesis block. You see the 315?
Wait. So this is the Genesis block?
Yeah, that's the time.
Wow. So it's for those who are just listening, it's Saturday, January 3rd, 10:15:05. So I guess 10:15 and 5 seconds, 2009.
Yeah, and so there's a 315 there too, Ghost. I mean, again, it's
that's crazy. I mean, that's 2009 too. I mean,
and it's connecting the 315 all throughout all these different things.
Yeah,
keep going.
Hard to ignore.
And you've got General Flynn talking about evolutionary destiny, which again feeds right into. And then you got General Flynn. If you take, February 1st, 2015, technically 2 + 1 is, you could even do like a 315 there too, right? Like it gets kind of crazy with some of the stuff because it's all there. But keep going down. There's General Flynn. Oh yeah, that's funny about General Flynn too. If you scroll up a little bit, right? Because he was let's scroll down right in the middle there. He was part of the he was only in office 22 days, 11/11. He was pardoned 1,111 days after 11/11/2017. He also commanded the 111th Military Intel Brigade, right?
Yeah.
And, February 1st is the day that Lincoln signed the amendment abolishing slavery. Funny enough, Flynn tweets about abolishing slavery, Bitcoin, on the same day as the 13th Amendment, which I thought was kind of top kick.
Dude, we should link once we're done here, you should go back and in the comments of this video, you should post the link to the episode of Rug Pull that he came on, which was relatively recent. I mean, for those who didn't watch it, G did not he didn't water himself down at all. And he did his full, why are we paying taxes? Digital 1776. He did the whole spiel to and you went pretty hard on Q as well with him. He didn't even flinch. He leaned right into it, and he was almost ready to one up you. I felt like it was one of the great interviews, I think, with Flynn, because I feel like people are a little timid speaking to a general like that, especially someone of Flynn's stature. And you didn't water yourself down at all. He got the 151 proof of version of G, and it was great.
Well, what's funny about that is I've been literally manifesting to have to talk to Flynn about that Bitcoin tweet, ever since the Anon movement, ever since I found Bitcoin and found these connections, because he tweeted that in 2015. Like,
yeah, 10 years ago, over 10 years ago.
10 years ago, Flynn tweeted that. If you don't think like the director of national intelligence, right, or national security knew about Bitcoin in 2015, like you're crazy. He says it's evolutionary destiny. Like he doesn't, I mean, those are strong words.
For those just listening, Flynn tweets on February 1st, 2015. He says, Bitcoin, the rise of digital currency may be a matter of evolutionary destiny. Understand it because it will happen.
Again, he's telling the enemy what's going to happen, right? He's putting it in their faces, saying, fuck you, we're taking over the world. You are no longer in control. And look, here's the DOD law of war manual. Like, I mean, if there's even more, keep going. You get to a section 11.22, right? Which again, JFK, public finances and taxes. Why did they choose 11.22, right? Keep going.
I mean, probably because you ended up writing. You probably wrote this manual, didn't you?
Yeah, I wrote the DOD war manual, right? But it talks about, look, right here. The occupier's powers to regulate currency may not be used to confiscate private property. For example, intentional debasement of currency by the establishment of fictitious valuation or exchanges or like devices, as well as failure to take reasonable steps to prevent inflation with the result of enrichment of the occupying power would violate international law. Like, the military had to create their own currency because they needed a way to defeat the occupying power. And if you scroll down, we've had many instances of war currencies back since the Civil War, you guys. Okay. And like, here we get into Space Force. Of course, Donald Trump created the Space Force. Okay. Jason Laurie.
Wait, let's watch this because this is always great to listen to Trump. It's only a minute.
The defense of our nation is going to be. America must be fully equipped to defend our vital interests. Our adversaries are training forces and developing technology to undermine our security in space, and they're working very hard at that. That's why my administration has recognized space as a war-fighting domain and made the creation of the Space Force a national security priority. I think we'll have great support from Congress because they do support something when we're talking about such importance. And a lot of the generals, a lot of the people involved have been speaking to Congress, and we have some very interesting dialogue going on. We're investing in new space capabilities to project military power and safeguard our nation's interests, especially when it comes to safety and defense.
Bitcoin is a weapon that projects power, primarily built for safety and defense. Okay, and so then you get Jason Laurie, who was literally tapped to set up the Space Force. This is a guy that literally was tapped to set up the Space Force.
Okay. Can you explain Jason Laurie's background for those who don't know who he is?
He was a top 10 officer that went to MIT, basically in the Air Force somehow. I don't know his whole tenure, but basically he got directive. So when you're an officer, you get to write about, I think it's some kind of thesis about they make the officers write something about the future, because they're always trying to stay ahead of the game, right, in warfighting. And so apparently Jason Laurie went to CQ Brown, General CQ Brown, which I'm sure you're familiar with.
Yeah. Okay. I have his bio here. So Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering from Baylor, Master of Science in Astronautical Engineering from the U.S. Air Force Institute, Master of Science in Engineering and Management from MIT. Current role, he's the Deputy Director of Technology and Innovation at the U.S. Space Force. Previous positions, he's the Director of Operations, Second Space Launch Squadron, Deputy Chief of the Commander's Action Group, U.S. Air Force. Advisory roles, he has advised senior U.S. defense officials, including the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the Office of the Security of the Secretary of Defense, on the strategic implications of emerging technologies like Bitcoin.
Yeah, and so again, he was tapped to essentially, again, officers get to write a thesis on whatever. Well, they get to pick from a list of subjects, and Jason Laurie went to General CQ Brown and asked if he could write about Bitcoin, I guess. And I think something of the lines of don't ask for permission, ask for forgiveness, maybe went down. And
I love that. I love that attitude.
And so that's what happened. And he wrote this 400-page thesis on Bitcoin as a weapons system. And I think it's funny because, like, literally Jason Laurie is from the Space Force, who Trump created, and it talks about Bitcoin as a way to project power.
Is this the post announcing soft war?
So this is before let's see.
It says, friends, excited to announce the candidate thesis topic I intend to propose to MIT and Air University. What are your thoughts and feedback? I still have time to pivot. It will be aimed at addressing Air University's research topic of, quote, disruptive technologies' impact on deterrence, end quote, and presented through a systems thinking viewpoint to satisfy my master's degree requirements at MIT's System Design and Management School. And then he hashtags Bitcoin, hashtag blockchain, hashtag cryptocurrency.
Yeah, and so he wrote the thesis, and it talked about that strategic deterrence, right? A strategic defense.
Yeah, it says mutually assured preservation, a case for Bitcoin as the fourth leg of U.S. strategic deterrence thesis. Bitcoin is a more powerful war deterrent protocol than mutually assured destruction, and one that is increasingly being adopted by society to restore its ability to achieve worldwide consensus on competing claims to the legitimate state of liberty and property. As Bitcoin adoption accelerates, the U.S. should seriously consider Bitcoin mining to become the candidate fourth leg to add to the existing strategic nuclear triad.
Which is pretty crazy talk, right?
Yeah.
And this was years ago, right? And so this was on LinkedIn. He wasn't even on Twitter. A couple people convinced him to get onto Twitter. We would go back on there. He would ask certain questions. I was even answering him on LinkedIn because when I saw it initially, because I was so intrigued. And he wrote this book. And the book, again, is really evolutionary destiny because of the antlers. The antlers are basically nature's way to for animals to project power, to ascertain dominance, but at the end of the day, they don't have to kill each other, right? When two alphas go at it with their antlers, like, they need still strong males as part of the clan. This is pretty long, but I recommend everybody go watch that. The TED Talk. It's on my highlights, but he talks about all these different things. And at the end of the day, Bitcoin itself is kind of like this sovereign nation. It's a way to project power. And so I recommend you guys all go actually, watch that video. But here's a great quote from Laurie. After sapiens, right, scroll up a little bit, suffer enough losses, they eventually become willing to do what surviving animals already do: project physical power to settle their disputes, establish control authority over their resources, and achieve consensus on the legitimate state of ownership and chain of custody of their property. People are eventually willing to spend the injury and risk the energy to secure the resources they value the way nature demands from every other animal in the wild. Major Jason Laurie. And, he's kind of talking about, like, look, you were getting exploited through every orifice, through every means of communication, and you're not going to, like, vote your way out of this. You're going to have to eventually use power, okay? And Americans at heart are insurrectionists who are overtly defiant to abstract power.
This is a quote from Soft War.
This is in the Soft War book. And where people who are evidently, defiant to abstract power, dismissive of rank, disloyal to their king, capable of and highly motivated to kill thousands of redcoats to delegitimize their oppressive king's abstract power. The U.S. Constitution gives American citizens the right to free speech and the right to bear arms for the explicit purpose of empowering American citizens to delegitimize the abstract power of their government if it becomes too abusive or systemically exploitive, just like the British monarchy did. And, this is interesting because guess what, Ghost? The battle between an insurgent and a counterinsurgency is the battle of what? It's legitimacy, okay? We are delegitimizing the old guard, right, through this new technology.
Yeah, I love that quote by him. That's such a great quote. Americans are insurrectionists, people who are overtly defiant to abstract power. And I completely agree. That is the spirit. That's when people talk about the American spirit, that is the American spirit.
And if you keep scrolling down, you get big. Oh, scroll back up. So I started tweeting about Bitcoin as digital 1776, and you scroll back up. Keep going up. Right here. So Jason, after I put out digital 1776, he tweeted this, and of course he's in the Durham boat, which Durham boats were in the Q drops. It's kind of interesting. Of course, he was in Boston.
Yeah.
At that battle, and so that was the Christmas Day post that Q did, I believe, with that painting. And so digital 7, like that's our boy. Like of course he deleted a bunch of stuff, but you can scroll down.
That's awesome. That's awesome that he posted that.
Well, it's awesome he posted it like after I did. Like he kind of gave me a hat tip of like, okay, G Money. Keep going.
When are you going to interview him?
Well, he's still under a gag order.
I guess that's true.
But the coincidence, the matrix, right? The matrix grew people as a crop used for energy and controlled their mind. Sound familiar? Wonder where they derived that idea from. Now comes a conspiracy label. So this is kind of what this is all about. It's all about a small group of people controlling energy, controlling time, controlling and basically using your own energy against you through taxation, through propaganda, through money printing. And it's time that we start delegitimizing these people peacefully. We don't have to take up arms and take up muskets. As long as you guys understand self-custody, as long as you guys understand how to do things, you can be a digital soldier. You don't have to be a fighting age or in shape or any of that stuff. You can sit on your couch and drink Bud Lights and eat bonbons and participate in the real battle that is, destroying the enemy's energy. Because if the enemy can't produce free energy, i.e. print money, right, the swamp drains itself, right? The swamp cannot be funded unless we, right, fund them with our own energy and time. And right now, we don't have any say over that happening, right? We get zero say over that. But in the future, I believe we'll go to a more voluntary association to where, GoFundMe, bro, government. If you want to, right, create or, do genocide in Gaza, like the Israel puppet regime is doing right now, then you can directly fund that if you want. And so how many people are going to sign up to do that? If it was a direct tax or, people had to do that on their own. I don't think many people would be paying Anthony Fauci's salary or setting up biolabs in Ukraine. So,
yeah, I covered the last week. Judge Janine Pirro was sworn in as the U.S. attorney for DC, and an hour after it posted, I went back and did a show on Badlands for it because there was some signal on Iran and Israel. But one of the things that came up during that was Trump's big beautiful tax bill, and 3 different times Trump said if they don't get this tax bill, if they don't get this bill passed, people's taxes are going up 65%. We're gonna have a 65% tax increase. I don't know what the hell he meant when he said that, but I mean that's if there's any layer of truth to that, and I don't see how there could be, but if there's any layer of truth to taxes going up 65%, whether it's corporate tax or income tax or whatever, that's insane, man. That I feel is going to be a watershed moment of people are just going to say enough, or they better. I mean, if they don't, then they kind of deserve the hose.
Well, what's funny is I've always talking about taxation as being slavery. I've always talked about we shouldn't be paying our federal income taxes. And now, funny enough, we have the technology to do that. We can secure our energy in a system that can not be confiscated, that cannot be censored, cannot be blocked, any of those things. And really, it's up to the people to just do a DDoS attack on their bureaucratic enforcement. They can't lock up everybody. They can't freeze everybody's funds in an immutable network that they don't control. And if enough of us get together and do it, right, guess what, right? The bio labs in Ukraine are not going to get funded anymore. If they don't have the money to pay for these things because they're not they're just literally printing it. If they don't have the ability to print it, how are they going to be able to do all these things? They won't. It seems pretty simple to me.
Well, the software thing is, the tax thing is inherent. I think even before you get to Bitcoin, I think people are just fed up with the waste, fraud, and abuse, and all the stuff that Doge has exposed, and the stuff. I mean, even before Doge came around, people were fed up with the whole the gross just wealth extraction that is the U.S. Treasury and Congress and the Federal Reserve. Software is fascinating. Those who haven't read the paper, I really suggest that you do. When G first explained it to me, that really inspired me to go read it, because this idea that Lowry lays out is, if every country has a strategic Bitcoin reserve, as Trump has implemented, but then you also have personal ownership, you have people self-custody, all that. And all of this is dependent on energy and energy production. That really disincentivizes the idea of kinetic war. Like, you're not going to want to go bomb another country and destroy their energy infrastructure, because it could potentially bring down the value of Bitcoin. And if you have a strategic Bitcoin reserve and your economy is somehow tied to Bitcoin in any capacity, which it looks like that is going to happen, I think we can safely say now that even if Bitcoin doesn't become the end-all be-all of currency, our economy is going to be impacted if Bitcoin crashes because of the market cap that it carries now. That really does kind of take away kinetic warfare. And at the very least, it's not going to become a state military practice, like widely done the way it is right now, where you have, you have Ukraine and Russia allegedly. We don't know what actually is happening, but they're firing missiles at one another right now. And they're talking about doing it to Iran. Israel's talking about doing it to Iran. So, that to remove that incentive structure from the equation, and then, kinetic warfare would really just be reduced to, acts of earnest terrorism, not, intelligence agencies manipulating that kind of stuff. That would represent a new human epoch. That is the next human epoch. And then warfare just becomes like cyber warfare, information warfare, soft war, right? So it's a fascinating thesis. Once it really clicked in my head as to what it meant and what it could mean, it really does change the way you look at the world, and it could potentially feed into the idea of the golden age, because not that we're going to have a utopia. You're still going to have conflict. You're still going to have warring factions. You're still going to have nation states that are going to be in disagreement, and they're going to want to go to war with each other. They're just not going to necessarily fire missiles and blow up each other's cities. They might have drones attack one another, and they might engage in cyber hacking and that sort of warfare. But it's fascinating. It really is a game changer if Lowry's right.
Well, I don't think it's a coincidence that a lot of this stuff and the Tesla stuff is coming out right now, right? Because Trump's uncle was the first person to get access to the Tesla files. Okay, there's actually Tesla Vortex math inside the Bitcoin code. Okay, Tesla also talked about the magic of 369. If you knew the magic, if you understood the magic of 369, you have the keys to the universe. And funny enough, 369 is 6 plus 9 is 15. So really 369 is 315. But the Bitcoin code, every block that gets mined, or every 210,000 blocks, the rewarding gets cut in half. And so 2 plus 1 is 3. The next one is 420. 4 plus 2 is 6, right? 6 plus 3 is 9. So it's 369, 369. It's just like over and over and over again. And that Tesla math is encapsulated inside of the code. And look, Tesla talked about an energy currency. The Q drops were not about getting Donald Trump elected for 4 more years and having a new God king. Okay. We all believe that the Q thing was something so special that we wouldn't even know how special it was during the time that we were going through that stuff. And, I can't think of anything more special than abundant energy, incentivizing other nations to actually cooperate, because if you were to bomb another nation, you wouldn't, in fact, damage the own value of your own currency. You damage your own network. Not only that, but you're demonetizing the military-industrial complex to where only certain people get wealthy from that thing, because they can take other people's wealth. They can take their land. They can take whatever. When Bitcoin becomes the most sought-after asset in the world, if you bomb them, guess what? You don't get to take their Bitcoin, right? Their Bitcoin isn't going to be something that you can physically take, right? It changes the entire incentive structure for warfare, because typically warfare is built upon the premise of bombing something and taking it from someone.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Exactly. Bombing it and then going and taking the gold, which we did in Iraq, by the way. We went into Iraq. We took gold out of Iraq.
100%.
Yeah.
And so, again, it's just math. It's just numbers, but it's the math that is unfuckwithable. It's a ledger that is unfuckwithable. And so it's funny that literally just having an unfuckable ledger is enough to change the course for humanity because it's that bad. It's gotten that bad that we have to now like put trust into a trustless system in order to course correct so that we can, do wonderful things that we can do and we can provide abundance for everybody on the planet.
Yeah, it's fascinating, man. It's a great, theory, and we really look forward to seeing how it all plays out. But certainly feels like something needs to come to a head because the idea of, and I know like John and BB were talking about this the other night, and so were John and Chris. But I don't know, like the idea of like gearing up for the next election, like who's ready for the 2028 election? Like, are you kidding me? Like, no, like I have no emotional capital left for like business as usual politics. And it feels like a lot of the apparatus around Trump is pushing us back into that. And Trump in a lot of ways is leaning into it. But I think as we just demonstrated before, when he was putting a lot of the infrastructure in place, he was going on television and saying, I think this is a scam. And clearly he didn't think it was a scam because his sons were the headliners at that conference you spoke at last week. And they like announced that they were investing major funds into Bitcoin, right?
Yeah, well, not only that, but it's the way the Trumps talk about the current financial system, where they talk about how to get a loan and stuff, there's just a couple people that push papers around to make a lot of different money. They talk about the corruption, they talk about the waste, fraud, abuse, all that stuff inside the financial system, and that blockchain in general solves, like the DeFi stuff solves all that corruption. And really, they're going for the jugular of Wall Street. And it's kind of beautiful to see because there's so much signal in what the Trumps actually have to say, even though they, again, promote shitcoins and stuff. You can pull the signal out to see very clearly that this is something much bigger than just crypto. This is about completely dismantling the bank's ability to print money for nothing and essentially give power back to the individual, right? And again, it's twofold though. It's not only self-custody of your Bitcoin and buying Bitcoin, but it's no longer being complacent with corruption. And for you, the individual, to say no, to stand up and say you're no longer contributing to pedophiles. You're no longer paying the salaries of pedophiles by filing a federal income tax. And again, if they could just print the money, what do they need federal taxes anyway?
Yeah. Well, to pay the interest, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, I have our last ad loading. It should be loaded in a few seconds. And then we can hit rants. I really appreciate you being here, G. This has been a good discussion. I hope people followed what we were talking about, because I know that G's passionate. And I love G's passion, and I love the fact that you're a little bit of an edgelord too. That you like to bring that kind of fire. When you say that the financial problems and the money is at the core of all this, I completely agree with you. I think that is very, very under considered. Like people don't put enough stock into the idea of how much the financial system is actually behind all of this stuff, and that the politics and a lot of that is just theater. And we really need to go after the bankers and the central bankers. And I think people, to some degree, understand that meme. They understand the Federal Reserve is an issue. They understand the central bankers are an issue. But how do you go after the central bankers if they are as powerful as we understand them to be? And man, this is quite a strategy. So we will see. But let's hear a word from our mustache friend.
I'm excited to announce that we're having a huge sale on overstock and brand new products. For example, MyPillow Percale bed sheets, every color, every style, every size, only $29.88. Our Percale bed sheets are breathable, cool and crisp, and they're perfect for spring and summer. And check out Rev 7, the next generation of energy drinks. It tastes great, and it gives you energy all day with no jitters and no crashes. Best of all, it's actually good for you. And for a limited time, try our 3-pack absolutely free. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 20% on our Rev 7 12-packs, or try our introductory 3-pack absolutely free. And our Percale bed sheets, all sizes, only $29.88. Twin size, full size, queen size, king sizes, all $29.88. Inventory is extremely limited at this price, so order now.
Actually, G, before we do rants, I would be remiss if I didn't read this, because this is just having a fire breather on here like you. This is worth sharing. This was posted the other day, and it was, let's see, this. Let me share it. Somebody tagged me in this, and it was Patrick Henry's birthday on May 29th. I didn't even know that, but somebody tagged me in it, and my post was just saying, shout out to the OG who wasn't afraid to go against the grain and say the unpopular things that needed to be said. And what I meant by that is that Patrick Henry refused to endorse the Constitution, even when George Washington begged him to, because he said it failed to put the proper checks and balances on the executive branch. And if left in its current form when they signed it, the executive branch would evolve, would grow, and become a new form of tyranny. And I think we've seen that with the alphabet agencies. So, yeah, man, just I thought that was applicable here.
If you read Soft War, it talks about what proof of stake is, right? Proof of stake is all your shit coins like XRP, Ethereum, Cardano, right? That's what's called proof of stake, meaning there's no, and Bitcoin is, the difference is Bitcoin is proof of work, okay? And what you have with proof of stake is, and essentially it comes down to allowing a small group of people to change the rules for everybody else. And right now we live in a system where, 500 people make the rules for 330 million. That's similar to like your shitcoin XRP, which, allows a very small group of people to change the rules, change the consensus mechanisms of that entire protocol. Bitcoin is not like that. Bitcoin, you need like a 90% consensus. Imagine if you needed 90% of congressmen to agree on anything to actually change any laws or do anything. It'd be pretty hard, right? To take away freedoms, to impose new laws. And essentially Bitcoin is a global governance system that is very hard for people to change the rules of. And if you can't change the rules with just a small group of people, you have to prove your worth. You have to earn your legitimacy. You can't just wave a magic wand to make new laws and control things. And so, that's what people really have to learn is the difference between proof of work, the difference between proof of stake, and that Bitcoin, really, it flips the tables of power from the institutions and the governments back to the people. It truly is power back to the people, because an individual can now, use unlimited watts in cyberspace. Right now, the Bitcoin network, the power hash function is that of probably 3 to 5x the size of the United States Navy combined. And what that means is that if any individual or small group of people wanted to change the rules of Bitcoin, they would need a force equal or bigger than that, right? The size of the United States military distributed power across the globe, which isn't even available because these computers, the ASICs that run the network, are very specialized. Each machine, is like, probably 500 to 1,000 computers, because they only run one function. The only function they run is to hash Bitcoin. You can't make them do something else. They literally only have one function, and that's it. And so, read about Bitcoin, learn about Bitcoin, or have fun staying dumb and broke.
You weren't getting out of here with that rant, so I'm glad that G got that in. All right, let's hit some rants. Mindy Q, $10. I was wondering if Bitcoin Cash would be good to buy too. By the way, love your shows. Well, thank you, Mindy. I will kick that to you, G.
Yeah, I know Bitcoin Cash is just another shitcoin. It was involved in the fork wars back in 2016, 2017 by a guy named Roger Ver, who tried to fork the code and got absolutely wrecked. And so if you want to lose your money, buy Bitcoin Cash. If you don't want to lose your money, buy Bitcoin.
Well said. Escape the Matrix 91, $10. Yo, G, it's Evan, Tipsy Robot again next year. Hope you join us, Ghost. Dude, I would love to go to Vegas for the conference. I don't know are they going to do the conference in Vegas again, or are they going to go somewhere else?
Vegas again next year. We all met up at a place called the Tipsy Robot, which is literally a robot bartender. So my futuristic utopia, we went to a bar where literally robots were serving you drinks. They were shaking margaritas. It was pretty fun. We had a good group there. Probably had 30, 40 people there. So it was fun.
Yeah, G shared a picture with the Badlands chat. That was pretty awesome that y'all had up there. So definitely had some FOMO. All right, let's see. Looks like we had Escape the Matrix again. Today is the 153rd day of the year.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Interesting.
Yeah,
all right.
It was just May 31st a couple days ago. There was some COVFEFE going around. We even had Trump with the peace sign. But Trump with the peace sign, right, is also V for victory. V is 22, right? V is 22, V is 1111. Victory is what they, 2 dots and a dash, right? Victory is what they put out during, I think it was World War II. And then, this is also the peace symbol, right? So victory equals 1111 equals peace. And so I believe 1111 is that frequency on COVFEFE. Trump tweeted that. And I don't think that's a coincidence, right? It was that weird post. All the anons fell for Joe Biden being a robot dead or something stupid. They were chasing lasers while, all that mattered was the V, baby. The V was the 22. The V was the 1111, in my opinion. And the V was, that we're going to get peace, and it's going to happen through technology.
Love it. I love it. Yefune Kinesi, I hope I said that right. Keep rumbling like rock stars. Appreciate you. Appreciate y'all's support. Elizabeth5326 is now a monthly supporter. Welcome and thank you for your support. Zero Rugrats 67, $5. Yotko7 asks if a bunch of criminals have Bitcoin and their assets get taken by Executive Order 13818. Where will that Bitcoin go? Good question. What do you think?
Say that again. What was it?
They're asking if criminals have Bitcoin and their assets get taken by Executive Order 13818, where will that Bitcoin go? Good question. I will interject and say Executive Order 13818 does not seize assets. It only freezes assets. So there's a difference. And I think I can answer on your behalf here and say that you can't freeze Bitcoin unless it's on like a exchange, right? If you're self-custody, come and get it.
Look,
come and take it, bro. Right?
Trump's executive order that created the Bitcoin stockpile specifically targeted criminal funds that had access to crypto. And so I believe that a conjunction 13818, because seizing, and freezing is kind of the same thing. If you deny access to someone to their assets, maybe Trump's going to put it as part of the stockpile because in Trump's executive order, the only crypto that Trump says he's going to accumulate is Bitcoin. He doesn't say he's going to accumulate any of the other shit coins. He says only Bitcoin will they continue to accumulate while they may sell the other shit coins to acquire more Bitcoin.
Yeah. The ones that are public, I mean, I understand there could be things happening behind the scenes that are not public, but the people who have been publicly named, Dan Gertler would be the one that comes to mind. There were like many court cases, and I think there are still court cases ongoing to actually seize the assets that were frozen. So I agree with you that freezing and seizing in practice is the same, but a lot of this stuff does have like correlating criminal charges that then have due process. So, but Bitcoin, if it's self-custody, I mean, how are you going to get it without a seed phrase? You can't.
Yeah, no, it's unfuckwithable for sure.
Let's see. Zero Rugrats 67, $5. Yorko 7, Dang Fat Fingers L11. I don't know, maybe some more fat fingers there. We'll see. But thanks for the rants. Appreciate it. John Q. Adams, $17. Thank you to G Money for orange pilling me. And I will second that. Thank you, G Money, for orange pilling me. I had a friend in 2015 who told me to buy Bitcoin, and he bought a bunch at the time, and then he ended up moving to, I think he lives in Alabama now, like North Alabama, where the electricity is really cheap, and runs like a Bitcoin whatever shop, like being a miner. And I wish I had listened to his advice and bought in 2015. So
it's never too late.
I just didn't, but
yeah, it's never too late. We're only going to the moon, and become financially independent, right? Become knowledgeable on the subject of your energy. And I teach people how to do it. I have a site. You can go download. First of all, you can download Jason Lowry's thesis on my site, 1776.love. You can also, get consulting. I help people consult with how to protect their Bitcoin through cyberspace and do project power through cyberspace as an individual. And so, look, an EMP won't destroy your Bitcoin. The network could completely go offline in America and your Bitcoin won't be gone. I teach people how to do that, become secure. But really, it's about education, and it's about spending more time than just a couple of minutes. You have to put in 100 hours. An individual is going to spend 40,000 hours in their lifetime working for money, working for energy, working for time. You might as well spend 100 learning about your own time and your own energy and how to conserve it in a thermodynamically sound system that is unfuckwithable.
Well said. Well said. And I would concur with that. All right, man. With that said, I think we'll sign off here. Everyone, please give this video a like. Please share it around. Please check out Rug Pull Radio, which comes on Badlands Media Thursdays at 10:30 Eastern. And I will go grab the Michael Flynn interview, and I'll throw it in the comments for anyone listening to this on replay. And yeah, give G Money a follow. What's your handle on X?
G Money Pepe is my handle on X, and then Bullion Bitcoin and BS is the Telegram channel. Bullion Bitcoin BS. So come join us. Come join the frogs in there. It's a fun time.
Awesome, guys. And we're doing a raid now over to Culture of Change with Ash. So everyone have a great week. We will see you next week. Thanks again, G Money. Hit the thumbs up. Chatelet.
Chatelet. Tip.
Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video. And a special thank you to all of our advertising partners. Please remember to shift your dollars to support those businesses that support Badlands Media.